you find it a lot easier, to speak harmoniously. So let's look at what right speech is. What is the definition of right speech? So in the Samyukta Nikaya 45.8, it said, we need to refrain from speech that's false, divisive, harsh, or nonsensical. There is a danger in lying. Okay, for one who transgresses one thing, I tell you, there's no evil deed that is not to be done. Which one thing? Telling a deliberate lie, which is true. The moment you can tell a lie, the moment you become very skilled in lying, there is truly nothing you will not do. Because to you, because that floodgate has opened, the floodgate to think that you can lie and you can deceive people and they're so deceived by you and you can get what you want, then you would test that limit again and again. And who knows, right? One day you might kill someone even because you have tested that limit until, there is no more conscience left and you could go that way, right? So that's why the Buddha said that. But there are situations, where we may not speak the truth at all. So one of it is we may want to please someone. Okay, so we want to get what we want quickly done. We may not lie outright, but we may cover some parts of the truth to come across as someone who is truthful for reputation's sake. That means we may not tell someone the whole truth about ourselves because we're too embarrassed. So we cover up the bits which are not so pleasant and we only say some parts, to protect our reputation. So we need to ask ourselves this question: do we need to lie to please someone or to get something? Does it mean we have to say something harsh? Okay, even if we're telling the truth. Is it necessary to cover the truth to come across as someone trustworthy? So, do we need to please someone? So, there are so many situations in life, it's really not possible to really give a straight answer, to be very honest. For example, right, when I'm at work, okay, I am not someone who needs to overstep my boundary. I'm not someone who needs to show someone else that I'm better than them. I'm not that kind of person. So when there's a new boss that comes or new supervisor that comes, I'll usually observe them and then speak in ways that, not so say to please them, but I try to, do whatever they ask me to do. Because I've been in a corporate job for so long, I know that it's futile to, try to make any change. And it just takes the life out of you. So why not I just use my time to meditate? So that's my thought, okay? I don't want to create any divisiveness at work. I want to be harmonious. So yes, then I tend to please. So do I speak lies when I tend to please? Well, personally, I don't lie. I just don't talk a lot. And when I don't talk a lot, then, then I become frustrated. So, but sometimes when there's opportunity, I will speak the truth when I get too frustrated. So so sometimes to please someone, to get something, it may not be totally unwholesome. Sometimes you really just want to get through the day. You're not doing something against your conscience. There's nothing bad in in your conscience lah. So basically, I think when it comes to virtue and speech, harmonious speech and whatever, we need to check our conscience. Just like the Kamala Sutta, where the Buddha was advising this group of people who were looking for good spiritual guidance, and he said, let your conscience lead your way. You must know in your heart, in your gut, whether whatever is said and done will be censured by the wise. Okay, so obviously there's no foolproof way to answer every situation like that. Okay, so does it mean we need to say something harsh even if it's true? Well, that also is very situational. When somebody is always very floaty, their mind is always in wonderland. Sometimes they need to hear the truth, okay? And you can't help but speak the truth. But if that truth spoken and they're still in the la-la land and they feel very hurt and they cannot function after you tell them the truth, then one must learn that, okay, then it's not suitable to tell this person the truth anymore. Then you got to just, not to lie, but then you'll be like, number one, please someone. Or rather, not please, not to hurt them, actually, not to hurt them. If someone lives in la la land, you tell them a few times about hard truth, they cannot accept, or they feel very hurt, then you should not ever bring it up to them. And allowing them to live in the la la land is also not an evil thing, because at least they are not harmed. Okay, is it necessary to cover the truth to come across as someone trustworthy? So of course I've done this lah. I'm very embarrassed, right, when I've done something not so good in the past, and I don't want to talk about it. But inevitably I realized that I just want to tell everybody about myself. So people are very surprised I'm so forthright and I'm so straightforward. There's nothing to hide. I literally have nothing much to hide, because I have no secrets, because I realized that I'm not tense, and even if people know, to me it's like, so what, it doesn't harm me, I don't really care, right? But of course, definitely I want to say that there is that feeling that you want to cover something because you don't want to look bad. I think it's very common for us to want to do that, and it's not wrong, okay? Just that we have to be aware of it lah. And if you're not ready to share everything, it's also okay, you don't need to, right? Okay, so why is this precept to refrain from lying is important? It's important because ultimately, right, anyone on a spiritual path, or anyone walking the Noble Eightfold Path, the Noble Eightfold Path is just one of the spiritual paths available on earth for us to find the truth to the meaning of life. Why is there birth and rebirth? Why is there death, right? Everybody wants an answer to that. And if you're seeking the truth, you see, the word truth already tell you already, you're seeking the truth. So if you lie to yourself and you're unable to face yourself or to be aware of self, to be truthful of yourself, how can you ever reach the truth, right? That would be an total opposite of what you are to seeking the truth. So that's not possible. Therefore, refrain from falsehood, and to tell the truth is one part of seeking the truth yourself. Because if you lie to yourself and don't acknowledge your experience, and you rather suppress or repress, then it's very hard for you to walk on the spiritual path, because spiritual path requires total honesty of yourself. So I shared this before in the first few sessions about relative truth being dualistic, absolute truth being independent, free from duality of any kind. So in Mahayana Buddhism, it's called interdependence, absolute truth, or interbeing. Absolute truth is also referred to as space, complete openness, or primordial purity. Alright. So Ayya Khema also talk about being independent. So when you're independent, you have taken all supports, all supports, including the supports of the 5 aggregates in your experience. That's how you reach absolute truth. So relative truth is observed through the 5 aggregates, mainly sense-based evidence, very apparent, can feel, can touch, can see. Absolute truth is not so obvious. So I read something before, if absolute truth is so obvious, then what is the use for faith? In this realm, we are learning to cultivate faith, and therefore truth is not so obvious. That's how we cultivate faith. It's not so obvious, it cannot be touched by your 5 aggregates. So relative truth is something you attain, like a goal, like a conclusion, okay? So if you approach a spiritual path like a goal, like a goalpost, like you have these few sets of goals to meet, and you finally reach there and you yay, like getting a degree, right? Then sorry, you're not on a spiritual path. Sorry to break the truth. So absolute truth is there's nothing to attain. That's why it's such a paradox, right? People scratch their head. What do you mean? There's nothing to attain, the Noble Eightfold Path? Am I not supposed to arrive at the destination No. Okay, because the spiritual path is about the journey, it's not the destination. In fact, nibbana is not a destination. Nibbana is not a destination. It's a realization. Okay, it's not like you reach some place and then that's it, finish, and then no more, disappear. No, that will be annihilation. So many Buddhists confuse that with annihilation. It's not annihilation. Yeah, annihilation means you're of a materialistic view. It's not that at all. So the path is the goal, right? Nirvana is not the goal, the path is the goal. Relative truth is limited to concepts, yeah, and the attention of a being who lives in the relative truth realm is always focused on the five aggregates. That means their focus, their concentration is either on the nose, oh, I smell something bad, or the eyes, oh, I see something beautiful. It's very one by one. It's either the eyes, nose, or ears. They can only focus on one sense base at a time. Whereas absolute truth is free from fixation. You're not fixated on either just your mouth, your tongue, your nose, or your eyes. Rather, you are fully aware, meaning at one time you can be aware of all your sense bases. Yeah. It's open, your attention is open and free, it's not fixated. Okay, so so we were on the topic of truth. That's why I brought up relative and absolute truth again. Okay, next, divisive speech. We may speak divisive speech against someone who is a common enemy so that we can become part of a certain clique, a group, to divide others, to get someone to be on our side, right? Divide and conquer, isn't it? So harsh speech. Okay, so when do we speak harsh speech? We speak harsh speech out of habit. Like, my late father, he was very used to harsh speech to get what he wants. So it's a habit. It's not like, he's evil or what. It's just a habit. And why is harsh speech not conducive to the path? Because it comes with hatred. Yeah, even if you're not an evil person, there is that element of hatred in that tone. Okay, and harsh speech is used to control others by creating fear, right? As some parents, right, they use harsh speech to control their kids rather than through reason. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be firm with your child. I think there are times a parent needs to be firm, maybe even needs to shout a bit to get attention. But I think you must be clear about your intention. That are you always controlling them with your tone, or are you working with your kid or with the other person at workplace or your spouse, with working with them in a relationship with a very calm tone, and only when it's really needed then you use a firm tone? So harsh speech is, like I said about my late father, right? Sometimes irrational anger. When do we speak nonsensical speech? So we may speak nonsensical speech to kill time. Yeah, like people who are so used to having something to do, used to having something to think about all the time, then this mental chatter doesn't stop in the mind. So if the mental chatter doesn't stop in the mind, what does it manifest into? It manifests into a lot of WhatsApp text. It manifests into a lot of talking to other people. Yeah, so a lot of texting, a lot of social media, a lot of all this lah. Okay, so we speak nonsensical speech to fill the silence because we're just not comfortable in silence, and I'm guilty about that. I'm guilty with that. Like if I'm in a group of people who are not meditation practitioners, yeah, and when there's silence, sometimes I speak lah in order to get the group comfortable with each other or to relax. So I do that. Yeah, and that goes with bonding with others. So sometimes it's not wrong to say that, hey, stop talking nonsense or what, right? Because come on, we live in a world where not everyone is a meditator, not everyone is a mindfulness practitioner, right? Not everyone has good awareness of their mind. So if we live in the world, we work in the world, we need to we 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 need to learn that, there's relationship between people and to cultivate harmony. When we can cultivate harmony in ourselves, we should be able to cultivate harmony outside. So we shouldn't judge others, and we shouldn't think that talking idle talk always means a bad thing. Okay, it's only bad when you're in a monastery or when you have put time aside for practicing meditation, you keep having mental idle chatter. Yeah, then that's not desirable. But when you're out in the world, we do need, sometimes to talk some nonsense, to laugh and to bond with the group, and it's okay. So when we refrain from divisive and harsh speech, we are learning to speak from loving kindness. So like I said, if your practice is from letting go, renunciation, letting go of the heart, 5 aggregates, that leads you to compassion, then it's easier for you to arouse compassionate speech, uniting speech, gentle speech, right? Useful speech, wise speech. It'll be easier. But however, if you're cultivating right speech without that base of heart chakra opening, without that, full compassion in your heart, but wanting to cultivate compassion, right? Then, although it's harder, it's also doable. You can, take note lah. Every moment, try to speak gently. Try to speak words that unite, not divide. What are words that divide? Words that compare. Words that measures, right? Measuring, comparing is divisive. Yeah. So when we refrain from speaking idle speech and we learn to be quiet when there's silence, then if you're a meditator and you're used to not so much mental chatter in your mind, you will actually appreciate silence, okay? And you actually want to be with the silence even when there are people around. So sometimes I feel that, but I really gauge the situation lah. So additional conditions to right speech. What are the additional conditions to cultivating right speech? Using words that are timely, like I shared, right? If you were to tell someone the truth while they're living in la la land, they cannot take it, then that's untimely speech lah. Or once you learn your lesson, you shouldn't repeat that mistake lah. Okay, and speaking true and meaningful words in line with the teaching and training. So to help people open their minds. So I have heard a colleague who tells me that, Maisie, what you say actually makes a lot of sense. And she says sometimes, it's reality and it's right. Even though I talk a lot of nonsense, to be honest, to people most of the time. And yeah lah, so it's true lah. Sometimes I try to, when there is meaningful conversation that comes out, I try to add some meaning and wisdom to it, okay? To share, right? To share. Okay, so speech requires you to listen deeply. Okay, how do you know when to speak the truth, when to speak timely? Okay, how to use the tone of your voice or your speech to benefit another? You need deep listening. So Thich Nhat Hanh said this: deep listening is at the foundation of right speech. If you cannot listen properly, cannot listen mindfully, then you cannot practice right speech, because what you say will always counteract the other person's intention, and it becomes very frustrating, right? And then you feel hurt, then why is that person so harsh to me, right? So you need to learn to listen, to learn to get the correct meaning. Yeah, no matter what we say, it will not be mindful if you're not listening, because you'll be only speaking only your own ideas and not in response to the other person. So it's like you're talking to yourself lah. Okay, so when we listen deeply to understand another, then we can understand that, hey, this person is actually suffering and they have difficulties too, like me. Then compassionate speech comes more easily. Yes, compassionate listening also requires you to refrain from being judgmental, from comparing. Sometimes I don't catch myself when I'm judgmental. For example, a friend's parent passed lah, and that parent is 93 years old, and that friend would be like, oh, so sad and crying and and grieving for a whole month. And then I cannot understand it, because to me it's like, but your parent is already 93 and you're already 60 something, and why are you grieving so hard? Life is the way it is. We come, and then we go, right? But then I realized that I was being judgmental because just because my mom died young, I thought then, okay, then there's a reason to grieve when somebody dies young. But no, actually, no matter how old the person is, as long as you have a close relationship with them, as long as they are your immediate family, no matter the age, yeah, there will be grief, there will be that sense of loss. And it's very normal. And I reflected on it that I need to be a lot more empathetic. I thought I was already empathetic, but I realized I'm not enough lah. So that's good because I learned to see that in myself. Okay, yeah. So when you learn to listen deeply, it means you are learning to switch the focus to the other person and not only on yourself, what you think, what you feel, and what you think is right. Okay. So Guan Yin is a symbol of compassionate listening because the word Guan, right, means observe or mindful. Yin is sound. You're observing and mindful of sound means you're what? Listening deeply. So in Theravada tradition, there isn't much spoken about the need to listen deeply and compassionately. But however, this compassionate listening is embodied in the Mahayana tradition, in the Bodhisattva Guan Yin, known as Avalokiteshvara in Tibetan Buddhism. So Guan Yin also means mindfulness of sound, and this is actually a meditation method, do you know? In ancient India, they meditated on the nada, which is called the sound of silence, which is used as an object in the Mahayana and the Tibetan Buddhist and the Hinduism, but not the Theravada tradition for meditation. Personally, I find that meditating on silence and sound has been of a great help to me. So practical advice to wise speech from Sayadaw Tejaniya, he said, for lay people, speech is a great opportunity to practice, because he himself was a layman until his 40s. Yeah? The 4 precepts of right speech, the precepts cautioning against false speech, malicious speech, harsh speech, useless speech, give a real boost to my awareness as a layperson and businessman. Yeah, he was running a shop. Since awareness and wisdom had come into the picture whenever I spoke, I had to apply them all day long. Saying things you shouldn't say or speaking much more than is necessary brings up a lot of agitation to the mind. The other extreme, complete silence or not speaking up when it is useful or necessary, is also problematic. Applying right speech is difficult in the beginning. It takes practice, but if you practice every time you talk to someone, the mind will begin to learn how to be aware, to understand what it should or should not say, and to know when it is necessary to talk. Of course, you will make many mistakes, but it's alright, because every mistake is a learning opportunity that will teach you how to do better the next time. Okay, so that's the end of today's session. I think I've said more than enough. Thank you for listening in.